We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to This Song Is Yours, the podcast where we dive deep into the art of songwriting and explore the creative journeys of incredible artists. I'm your host, Simon Fink, and today we have an absolute powerhouse of a guest on the podcast. Our guest is none other than political pop trailblazer Noga Erez. The alternative pop star, singer, songwriter and producer has been redefining innovation in music for years now, and she counts icons like Billie Eilish, Britney Spears and Missy Elliott as fans. Last week, Noga dropped her brand new record, The Vandalist. It's a bold and genre-defying album that blends various sonic styles with curious, sassy and emotional lyrics. From anger to hope and everything in between, The Vandalist is Noga's most daring and diverse work yet. Now, in today's episode, we're sitting down with Noga Erez to talk about how The Vandalist came together and why it might be her most controversial release yet. We'll also dig into her creative process, how she landed collaborations with Flyana boss and Robbie Williams for the record, and how she's planning to translate the energy of The Vandalist into her live shows. We want to say a huge thanks to Nina and Juliet for their help with today's episode. The Vandalist is out now, and you can find links in the show notes on where to purchase or stream the record. Also, while you're there, don't forget to check out our website and follow us on all of our social channels for updates on future episodes. Now let's get into it. Here is our conversation with Noga Erez. Please welcome to This Song Is Yours, Noga Erez. Noga, hello. How are you doing?
Hi. I'm good, Simon. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
I imagine that there's a lot going on in your world at the moment with a brand new record coming out. Would I be kind of right in making that assumption?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot going on, and a lot of good stuff is happening and things that I'm very excited about and grateful for. It's a good time in that sense.
Look, I'm very, very glad to hear that. There is a brand new record out from yourself out at the moment when people are listening to our conversation. It's called The Vandalist. It is a brilliant and stunning record. So congratulations on this record. I imagine...
Thank you so much.
Of course. I imagine for someone like yourself, I know that you're... and I want to get into this a little bit later. I know one for some boundary pushing, like testing, I guess, where certain lines may stand when it comes to creativity and art. Is there a heightened sense of nerves when you're putting out music, or because of that, are there no nerves because you feel confident in kind of pushing that envelope, if that makes sense?
Yeah, for sure. I think that some people like to define me as boundary pusher, but I just think that in order to push boundaries, you have to know the boundaries. And I don't feel like I know of anything that is supposed to be a boundary when it comes to making music, when it comes to putting together lyrics. It just doesn't exist in my little world. I think it's a part of a little bit of ignorance in a good way. I just have no idea what people are talking about when they say, yeah, this is not what you would expect it to be. So let me just start with that and say that for me, I'm just, doing what makes sense. Sometimes I'm so wrong, when it comes to thinking like, oh, I'm like sure that I made a pop song, a pop hit. And no, I just discovered that I have no. Ori, my partner in life and my partner in making music, it was over there yelling at the back. Yeah, we don't know. We just go with whatever comes. So it doesn't affect the nervousness. Nervousness is about, when releasing songs, is not just about having how will it be accepted and will people get it. It's more about, something that was really mine and was existed only in my world, and now it exists in another place. So I feel like it's maybe it's more about that.
100%. I know you just mentioned Ori, your partner, who is, producer and artist and partner in life as well. I know that he and you worked on this record for quite a period of time, I believe. I want to say it was in Madrid that a lot of this record was kind of conceived or produced.
Yeah, true. A lot of it. I think we spent 5 months in Madrid, but we also spent a lot of time in LA and tour buses and hotels, and in Tel Aviv, obviously, where we're based. But yeah, Madrid was where we started it.
Do you find that with recording in many different places, and obviously sonically, this record is it doesn't kind of stick to one genre. There's a lot of different influences, which I want to touch on later. But like, do you find that those influences they come from the location of kind of where you're working on the music, or kind of the surroundings of where you are creating?
I don't know if that's true about the places that I get to visit for 1 or 2 days when I tour, because that's the shitty thing about touring is that you get to go to these amazing places but never really get to visit them. You know, you get to see the airport and the venue and the hotel. Not to complain about touring. I think that touring is incredible. But Madrid, because we got to stay there and we were in a state of mind of basically absorbing everything around us. So we went to museums and watched movies and made friends with people from the studio who played us a lot of music coming from not just Spain, but also there were a lot of people there from Argentina, Colombia. I mean, people that we would talk soccer with and music. So that was really fun. And so we got to know a lot of music, but also just the experience of getting on a taxi and listening to what the radio plays over there, which was at the vast majority was, this reggaeton type of music. Cut. So that created III. That is a very direct influence. The song III that we just released as one of the singles in the album, that was really direct influence. Other than that is, I don't know if it's so easy to make, such a direct line culturally.
100%. With this record is gorgeous. I know I keep saying it, and I'll apologize that I'll try and stop saying it at one point. As you mentioned, the influences on this, like as you mentioned, this reggaeton. There was some very sharply and beautifully produced alternative pop. There was some melding of genres. I think it was Godmother that has this beautiful heavy bass throughout, but then almost what sounds like it's strings and orchestra, but almost kind of through a vintage kind of lens. It's a beautifully put together album. Going into the record, was it discussed with Ori and yourself in terms of what kind of record you want to make, what sonics you want to cover, or was it just as you kind of went through the process of writing these songs, it was what came out?
We always discuss what we want the record to be, and then it ends up not being that, and it's part of the game and the process, because we change and because we take a lot of time to make our albums and we don't rush ourselves. So we just, wait until we feel like we have a body of work, and that time we could shift in our perspective about life and what we like musically and what themes we want to touch on, both sonically and thematically. Is that a word?
Yeah.
I'll ask you that question every now and then. English is not my first language, so because of that, we end up just having albums that are, I like to call them all over the place. They just don't want to be in one place, and they're all over the place. And I used to say it in a negative way, because I used to think that being all over the place would be why people would find it hard to relate to my music. And now I feel very confident about it. I feel like this is what people will relate to. I mean, the fact that it doesn't have to be one thing. It can just be everything.
Which I think works in the positive for this record. There are multiple records that come out in this day and age that I feel and no discrediting to any other artists and how they want to run their project and do what they do. But sometimes I think they get stuck in a trap of like repeating what works and just doing that 12 times over. Mm-hmm. The nice thing about a record like this is that it is unpredictable. I found myself kind of like listening intently right up until the end. I feel like some albums, a lot of albums have that second half drop off. This just kind of like kept piquing my interest time and time again. We're very lucky enough to have a listen to the record before it has come out. But I think that's it works in keeping the listener engaged as well by having different things, different sonics, different ideas as well, I believe.
But it also works the opposite way, which is something that I'm aware of and have come to peace with. You know, with some people, some listeners don't like to be surprised so many times during a song or during an album, and I think it's fine. My mom, she's it's so fun to play her new music, because she always reacts to the music very vividly. She feels music in a way that is so strong, and she laughs a lot during listening to songs, and it's so childish in a way and so beautiful to see. And you can see the surprise in her eyes every now and then she's like, when are you guys going to give me a break? And during the process of making the album, a comment like that, which comes from the most positive place, when it comes from my mom, could really get you into an insecure space. I used to, a lot of times think like, what if I could narrow it down and really use just, what has to stay there. And I've listened to, I listened to the audiobook of Rick Rubin's new book about creativity, The Creative Act. And he said something that stuck with me about narrowing down the ideas and about just stripping it down and just leaving the skeleton of what you cannot get rid of. And I've done that. I got into the project on Ableton many times with songs and started to strip it down, take out a certain instrument, lower a certain rhythmic element, all those things. And then it just came back to being what it is, this maximalistic approach that doesn't come from an approach. It just comes from, I don't know, I guess my mind and Ori's mind tend to go to different places, and we just have to accept it.
I love that though. And I think that, it kind of, it is the book that you're talking about. It's just out of reach, but in my bookshelf at the moment, it is a fantastic read, because it does kind of, advise of, working out exactly what it is, the bare minimum that actually works, and then working it from there. The one thing, I think maybe the most surprising thing about this record, being aware of your music, some of the sonics I found like stunning, not surprising. I have to advise, there's a number of collaborators on this record. Flyana Boss, incredible. Who else did we have? Eden Ben Zaken?
Yeah.
Pronouncing that right?
Eden Ben Zaken. Everything in the Hebrew language is just like make it flat and dry. Eden Ben Zaken, like you don't have any saliva in your mouth.
I know that we discussed this before recording today. The Australian accent does tend to botch a lot of things, so I do apologize, Eden.
That's fine. You would love this.
The guest that I found the most surprising, that I had to do a double take to check. You have a song with Robbie Williams on this record.
That's true.
I would not have guessed that in a million years.
Right? I mean, yeah. You know, what I love about the Robbie Williams feature is that it's not a feature. It's basically, you know, a superstar from my childhood, because he was huge here. And I realized from getting to know more and more people from other places, well, especially the US, that a lot of people are not familiar with Robbie Williams and his crazy pop songwriting. You know, it's so it started with he's basically coming in for a small hello in the song. It's not a feature. He's just saying, "Hey, I'm Robbie Williams. I'm going to play this part," and then he disappears back into his fame and leaves us, the small people, to continue to talk about what we want to talk about. He reached out to me. I don't remember when, a few years ago, and told me that my music makes him feel like he's 15 again, that he hadn't been excited about music in that way for a long time. And then he came to play a show in Tel Aviv last year, and I got to be a guest in the show and sing the song "Kids" with him, a song that originally features Kylie Minogue. So yeah, and then we got together, and it was all like funny, and yeah, he's a very special human being. It was so amazing to find out. And then during his set, I realized that I knew all the songs, all the songs and all the lyrics. And then we kind of swapped features. So I came in for like one sentence in one of his songs, his new songs, and he did the same with mine. So that was great. And the funny thing was that Ori used to do this part that he's doing, and then he sent us his vocals, and he said, "I did my best Russo impression." Yeah,
that's kind of nice praise for Ori, though, I imagine. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Are you surprised when, obviously, like, fans and having music that resonates with people is always so special, and having people like Robbie Williams reach out? I know that also we've got Missy Elliott, Billie Eilish. I believe Britney Spears has expressed that she's a fan of yours. Is it surprising when you see these people of, I think you and I are a similar age, people that we kind of saw when we were coming up? Is it surprising to see that your music resonates with them as well?
Yeah, it's surprising, and it's not surprising, especially when it comes to someone like Missy Elliott. Like, Missy Elliott for me was like, oh, okay, this is for sure somebody who can hear how influential she was on my musical upbringing. But at the same time, it still remains a very kind of like a virtual reality, something that doesn't really touch me, in the sense that I don't really understand that it's the truth. I don't really understand that actually really happened. It's so surreal to me, coming from where I come from and feeling so provincial, you know, to where music happens. That it's just words that people say to me. You know, Britney Spears just danced to Nails for the 5th time or whatever. And those words don't really, it's a weird feeling, yes. Like not really understanding something that you intellectually know.
Yeah. I imagine it. Yeah. It's the words you recognize, but it's like, how do you process something like that in terms of converting it to a, I guess, like, not tangible, but yeah, I imagine it's a very interesting thing for you. I'd love to know, with this new record, with the Vandalist, I know it's always a bit unfair to kind of ask an artist's favorite song because it changes. It can really depend on the mood or what day it is. For you, though, with this record, and there's some really stellar moments across this record. As I mentioned before, there was Danny, there was Sad Generation, Godmother, PC People. For you, is there a song you're most proud of from this record that if almost taking a leaf out of Rick Rubin's book, we were to strip this record back to one or two tracks, is there one that you're like the most proud of that it's made onto this record?
I don't know if it's the one that I'm most proud of, because being proud of something is weird for me. I love and I am connected the most to Smiling Upside Down, and it hasn't changed for me for a long time. It's been my answer for that tricky question for a while now. Smiling Upside Down is just a song for me that we managed to, so the way we wrote it was not our usual way. We write the lyrics while writing the music, and it's all kind of blended together. This time we had the music, we had the melody, but for a long time the lyrics were difficult for us to crack. And there was one morning in the apartment in Madrid where we just sat down, for breakfast and just wrote the lyrics on a notebook, not while having the song played in the background, not being influenced by the music so much, but only thinking about the story. And that was a very special process for me, because we got to do something that I didn't think that we can do. Because our lyrics, I don't know why, but maybe because English is not our first language, and maybe because we are very sonic people. We are very focused on how it will sound. That sometimes I feel like it's not so clear. For me, it's clear, and for Ori, it's clear, but for other people, it's so open for interpretation. But in this song, I felt like we made a very clear story, that it had a very clear structure. And I guess you can say that I'm proud of it as well.
I absolutely love that. Thank you very much for sharing that. I know sometimes, especially after, and I imagine that for an album that I think is going to do very well this year, you're probably doing a lot of press. So I imagine that, retelling these stories time and time again sometimes takes its toll. So thank you very much for sharing it. With that in mind, I imagine that there's also a level of excitement taking these songs out onto the road. I know that at the moment that you and I are speaking, which is a few weeks ahead of the record, there's only one or two dates in your calendar at the moment. Can at some point we expect to see you touring the States in support of this brilliant record? Yeah,
for sure. The touring is going to be late this time. Usually we start, I don't know, I think usually we start touring even before the record is out. But because the record had to be delayed so many times because of things that are happening in my country, it got the schedule mixed up. And what happened was that we're going to tour it next summer. It's so fucking weird. And just to complain for 1 second, having an album, because it took us the same amount of time that it takes us to write an album, but it just took us a long time to release the album. So now we have an album that's being released more than 3 years after the previous one. We've had it for over a year, and these songs, we play some of them live and have played some of them live for 2 years already. And we're going to start touring this album in the summer. So it's weird. It's kind of like, I don't know why this comes to mind, but when you have a family and and the parents are making 2 children when they're young, when they're in their late 20s or early 30s. And then when they're 42, they're making another baby. And there's like a huge gap between the, the second and the third. I have that in my family. That's why it comes to mind. Mm. So, all of a sudden the nieces are the same age as the I don't know. It feels to me like a weird capsule or twitch or in time. So yeah, that's going to be our situation. But what it's going to, do on a positive note is that we're already starting to work on the next album. We're going to have a lot of time to work on it. So hopefully the next album will not take so long.
Look, that is very exciting to hear that we're already getting the next album, but also excited to see how touring goes for this record and how you can also, we've talked a lot about it on this podcast with artists in terms of the audience wants to be engaged. And for some of the audience, these are brand new songs. But as you said, you've been playing these for quite a much lengthier time. So it's also about keeping yourself and Ori engaged as well and keeping you kind of active and thinking and not just kind of falling into a repetitive kind of state. So look, very excited to see those tour dates when they are released. We'll make sure that we share them on the podcast. Very quickly, Noga, I want to ask, we usually wrap things up by asking, I guess, what they're currently listening to. Is there anything at the moment that's on high rotation for yourself?
I'm heavy rotating on the new Travis Scott album. Mm-hmm. That's one I keep coming back to because I feel like this is the Kanye West record that Kanye hasn't been doing for years. So it's a great one. What else? I feel like I'm a bit, in a weird way, I'm a bit in a retro kind of time. It's not a weird thing. I think that I remember that when COVID happened, a lot of people were coming back to old songs, like songs that they grew up on, or music that kind of established who they are musically, because times when you feel insecure, I think you want to come back to something that feels like home to you. And I'm in a very similar time in my life. So I'm listening back to, Nancy Sinatra and Nina Simone. And I'm going back to some of my childhood, like Leonard Cohen, all these that I used to listen to when I was a child and when things felt safer. That's where I am.
I absolutely love that, though. Bit of an eclectic mix. Travis Scott, some oldies when it comes to jazz, Nancy. Absolutely love that. Noga, thank you very much for coming onto the podcast, and congratulations on the Vandalist. It is out right now. We'll make sure in the show notes that people can purchase the record, follow you across your socials, and keep up to date when those tour dates come out. But again, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast.
Thank you so much, Simon. It's my pleasure.